Welcome back to another in our series of Myriad 5 Playout training courses. In this course, we'll be focused on Myriad Anywhere RVT and Myriad Anywhere Playout Remote. So what exactly do we mean by Myriad Anywhere and how does it help you? Well, Myriad Anywhere, especially the cloud version of Myriad Anywhere, which is what we'll be focusing on today, provides a web interface to allow you to perform key tasks for your Myriad Playout system. Principally, this is voice tracking or remote voice tracking, log editing, and also the option to control the live studio playout directly from a remote web browser. In order to do this, you need to set up the remote edit server and set up your Myriad Anywhere Cloud account, but those were covered in a separate video. So for today, we're going to assume that everything is set up and working, and you also know a little bit about how Myriad Playout works in general, so we can focus specifically on how things are done in Myriad Anywhere. In order to access Myriad Anywhere Cloud, you'll need a copy of Chrome or Firefox. We can also use the very latest version of Edge, which is built on Chromium technology, which basically means it's Chrome underneath. Next, you have to type in the unique URL for your station. Once you've got the right site, type in your username and password that you would normally use to log into Myriad in the station. Next, if you have multiple stations within your station, i.e. an FM and an AM, or a classic or a gold station, you can select the station you want to work with. In this case, we're going to work with the hot digital station. Here we can see the main Myriad Anywhere Cloud interface. We have several things that we can look at. First thing is the ribbon on the top, which gives you access to the settings menu, as well as context-sensitive buttons, depending on whether you are on media browser mode or library search mode. The library search allows you to browse the content on your system by category and by type. The media browser allows you to browse the media wall. We also have a player, which allows you to listen to content. And on the right, we have the log. This can be used for editing the log, as well as recording voice links and editing segues. If you've opted for the Myriad Anywhere Remote add-on, you get some additional options on your ribbon. Firstly, you can import content from your local system onto your Myriad. You can also export content directly from your media wall to your local system, and you can even delete content on your Myriad Playout system. Finally, you can connect to the live studio to give you total control over the live on-air playout. But we'll be covering this in much more detail later. You may assume you need a mixing desk and a fancy microphone to use Myriad Anywhere for remote voice tracking, but in fact the best setup is a good quality microphone and a set of headphones. The first time you run Myriad Playout, you will likely see a pop-up that is asking whether to allow the browser access to your recording device, i.e. your microphone. You need to click Allow to allow Myriad Anywhere to access your microphone. Now let's look at how you access the sound devices needed for Myriad Anywhere. Click on the Anywhere icon and select Options. And you want to make sure you have the Media Engine Settings option selected. In the Audio Settings section, you can choose the device or allow the browser to automatically choose the device. Currently, it's set to automatically use the device and it will use the default device for your Windows system. If you wish to choose a different device, click on No, and then choose your input device, your playout device, and your media player playout device from the drop-down list. So if you have a headset, choose the headset for recording, also the headset for playout on both Segue editing and for the players. If you have a separate USB microphone, you can select that here as well. I'm going to switch this back to headset for this. Hit save, and now you should be good to go. If you've used Myriad Playout in the studio, then you should be familiar with the Library tab. There are a few slight differences between the library in Myriad Playout and Myriad Anywhere, so let's go through them. Just as in Playout, you can select content either by category or by typing in a search for what you're looking for. You can also browse the links, the adverts, and other types of content on your media wall. You can also filter the results to exclude or include items that are restricted by hour and date. Or, if you prefer, you can have all items regardless of any restrictions. When you highlight an item, the Show Information button becomes enabled. Click on this will give you information about the item you've selected. Here you can see whether using it right now would break any nearest play rules for song or artist or previous and next day. These rules are referencing the current log position, but you can change these rules to reference the current time by clicking on the Current Time Reference button. And you can also see on the grid when either this item or items by the same artist have been played. The plus indicates that an item by the same artist has been played in that hour. And if you saw a number, that would tell you how many times that item has been played in this hour. So if I did the same thing on my sweepers, you'll be able to see that this item was played once in this hour and once in this hour. As with Myriad Playout, you can select items from the library and drag them into the log, or indeed into a player. And if you don't have the item on your local cache, the item will be downloaded, ready for playback. In addition to the library, you can also browse the media wall from inside Myriad Anywhere. Click on the Media Browser button, and you can see you get a mini version of your media wall. You can scroll up and down the media wall using the buttons, or you can jump to a specific item. If your station has enabled the optional Anywhere Playout Remote features, then you can also import and export from the media wall. To export, select an item and click on the Export button, and the item will be downloaded to your standard download file. There are also a few other options you can choose in terms of what quality to download in. If you want to import some content into your system, find an empty media item, click on the Import button, choose the file you wish to upload, you can fill in the title, artist and description and type if you wish, or Myriad can determine them based on any metadata within the item. When you're happy, click Save and Import. You can see the pending uploads are listed here. And once the item is uploaded, it is in the media wall, ready to be played or dragged into the log. If you have the appropriate rights, you can also delete items from the media wall. Select the item you wish to delete, click on the delete button. You'll be asked to confirm, and now it's deleted. The log is a list of items that Myriad will play in either live or automated shows. In Myriad Anywhere, you can edit the log just like in the studios, as well as edit segues and add voice links. Using the log is almost identical to using the log in Playout in a studio, so it should be fairly familiar to most users. Let's take a quick look. The Home button will take you to the item that should be playing right now, or the item closest to the time right now. There's also a Home button on the side here that does the same thing. The Go To button allows you to choose a time and date to view the log. So if I wanted to look at 10 o'clock tonight, click Jump, and here we can see the log for 10 p.m. tonight. The Preview button allows us to download a copy of an item in the log for previewing. This will download the entire item, not just the top and tail as in Segue. If I highlight an item and click on Preview, if the item is already downloaded, it will play in a player straight away. Otherwise, Myriad Anywhere will download the entire file. The Edit menu provides access to all the edit log functions that would normally be found on the right-click menu in Myriad Playout. Highlight an item and drop down the edit options. Let's go through them one by one. The first one is Replace. When you click on Replace, Myriad Anywhere will suggest other items from the same category that might be used to replace the selected item. Here we can see we've got some items from the pop category. But what about if we're thinking that James Blunt may be a good option, but we don't know for sure whether it's been played recently? Well, we can highlight the option we're interested in, and then click on the Show Information button here, and it will show us when James Blunt was last played. Not in a while. So we can replace with James Blunt. We can also choose whether this item should be droppable or should be able to be faded by Myriad in order to run to time. Currently, this item can be both dropped and auto faded, but if we didn't want this one to be dropped, we could simply turn off that. You can also insert any of the main log items in Myriad using Myriad Anywhere. Select the Insert New Item Before option, and whatever you select from the list here will be inserted above the highlighted place in the log. So let's say we wanted to put an auto hook in. Select auto hook. You'll then be asked to set the details for the auto hook just as in Myriad Playout, i.e. the item to play at the beginning of the auto hook, any separator item, any item at the end of the hook, the numbers played, etc. As you can see, the auto hook has been put in there. Let's try that again with a script. There we can see the script. And finally, let's do the same thing with a social media item. As you can see, any of the items that you insert in a log that require editing have an equivalent editing window to the one you would find in Myriad Playout. Full details on all the available log items and their associated settings can be found in the Myriad Playout documentation. You can also copy, cut, and paste items in the log. So you can highlight multiple items, choose Edit, cut them, and then paste them back into the log. Finally, we have the two delete options. If we soft delete an item, it will be left in the log, ready to be reinstated at any point. If, however, we do a permanent delete, it will be removed from the log altogether. There are a couple of other ways we can also delete things from the log. If we click on the time on the left-hand side of a log item, it will also do a soft delete. And then if you click on the same area, it will restore that item. And finally, if we want to remove something from the log altogether, but don't want to use the edit menu, we can pick it up and we can drop it into the waste bin in the bottom right-hand corner. Next up is the Segue Edit button. This allows you to open the Segue editor, which is used for editing segues and recording voice tracks. There are two options here. You can highlight the item that you want to be playing at the end of the segue and click on the Segue Edit button, which will open up the floating Segue editor. Or, if you prefer, you can drop down the button and choose the Show Inline Segue Editor, which shows you a mini version of the Segue editor along the bottom of the window at all times. We'll come back to Segue editing shortly. First of all, let's finish off the options on the ribbon. Next up, we've got the chain type. This allows you to change what will happen at the end of the selected item. Currently, the item we've selected has got a green circle, which means that it will automatically fade into the next item when it comes to the end. Because this is an auto fade hour, that has to be a green circle. But if we were to change this hour mode to be a live mode, then we could change the chain type to be a stop, at which point, when the end of this item is reached, it will actually stop and wait for the presenter to press the go button. This is great in a live show, but not so good in an automated show, which is why when you're in auto fade mode, all of the red squares are automatically turned to green circles. The final option here is a sweeper, signified by a plus. This means that the item will be swept into the intro of the following item. So if, for example, you take this sweeper here with a plus, it will actually be swept into the intro of Mel C, which has a 24-second intro time. We also have a script in there, but Myriad Playout will ignore scripts when it comes to Playout. The refresh button simply refreshes the view of the log. Under normal circumstances, there is no need to refresh the view, as Myriad will automatically update if the log changes at the live end. However, if you're concerned or you don't think that it has updated, you can manually trigger a refresh without refreshing the whole browser window. The final option on the ribbon is the Playout Mode selector. This allows you to select the mode for the hour that you're currently working in. You can see here we're currently working in the 10 o'clock in the evening hour. So when I change this to live mode, it is affecting the 10 o'clock hour. You also notice that the chain type has returned to a red square. That's because Myriad remembers the live and auto fade status of all items. So as you switch between live and auto fade, the system will revert back to the correct setting. Before we move on to segue editing, let's take a final look at a few of the other options we have available within the log itself. As we've already seen, you can soft delete items by clicking on the time and restore them as well. If you hover over the icon to the right of the time, you'll also see the media ID and the category for the item. Then you have the title and the artist. The time in brackets is the intro time, and this is the overall length. Finally, the chain type and the status is displayed on the right. You can page up and down the log using the page up and down buttons, or you can jump to the beginning of the next hour or the beginning of the previous hour using the previous button or the next button. As we've already seen, we can also drag items from the media wall or the library directly into the log, and we can move stuff around within the log itself. Using log is fairly intuitive, and if you've used Myriad Playout in the studio, you'll probably be able to use the log in Myriad Anywhere without any problems. Now let's move on to the Segue editor, which is used for editing segues and recording voice links. Highlight the item you wish to be playing at the end of your segue, and then click on the Segue editor button. In this case, we can see that the waveforms are visible, which means that Myriad Anywhere has already downloaded the end of the previous track and the beginning of the next track in low quality format. That means we can also listen to it straight away. Okay, so that's okay, but if we want to edit the segue in any way, we can simply move the item to the left or right. And when we release it, we'll hear the new segue. Great, that's okay, but we also need to edit the envelope, so let's do that. If we're happy with that, click on the Save button, and that segue will be uploaded back to Myriad at your station. Let's try that again, but this time we'll choose a couple of items that haven't been downloaded before. Here we can see there's no waveform, which means it hasn't been downloaded. There are two ways we can force the system to download. We can click on the Download Items button here, which will go off and do it. Or if we simply press play, the system will check to see if it's a local version in the cache, and if there is no local version, we'll download the low quality previews. Okay, let's look at a few other options. We saw earlier how we can change the envelopes and move things around. If we want to reset any of the envelope editing, click on the Reset button here, and it will put the envelopes back. And if I wanted to abandon this segue altogether, you can click on the Abandon button, and it will put it back to the way it was originally intended. You'll also notice as I've been doing this demo that every time we've moved something or changed a envelope, it has started playing automatically. You can adjust that option if you don't like it by clicking on the Anywhere drop-down and selecting Options, then Segue Editor. And this section here dictates what happens when you play. So if you don't want it to automatically start, change to start manually, and hit Save. You can also zoom in and out using the plus and minus buttons to see more or less of the waveform. You'll notice that only the last 20 or 30 seconds and the first 20 or 30 seconds has been downloaded, and there is silence for the rest. This is just to save time on downloads and can be adjusted in the settings if you'd prefer Myriad Anywhere to download the entire audio waveform. Now let's take a look at the triple segue editor. If we highlight a sweeper and click on the segue editor, instead of just seeing two items, we see three items. If I download the waveforms, you'll be able to see how this sweeper is going to be played. If we preview it,
this is Hot FM, radio 24/7.
Okay, if we don't like the position of the sweeper, we can move it around. As you can see, the envelope editing will move along with the sweeper. And we can also adjust the envelope editing. The dotted line indicates that is an automated ducking, and if I reset this one, you can see this is dotted, which means that this is how Myriad is going to deal with it automatically. As soon as we adjust the segue, it becomes solid, which means that Myriad will now always use the envelope editing that you've set on the Segue editor. Hit save, and that's committed. The final thing we'll see is you can drag along the viewport here so you can see a bit more of the waveform. Just allows you to focus what you're looking at. So that's Segue editing. Next we need to look at voice tracking. The voice tracking process uses the same Segue editor as we were just looking at. The only difference is instead of editing the segue, you record a voice link between the two items and then edit the segue if you need to. The easiest way to demonstrate this is to just simply show you. Highlight the item you want to be playing at the end of your voice track, click on the Segue Edit button, now click on the Voice Track button. The system will play you the end of the previous track. In this case, don't stop now. As soon as I start speaking, the system will detect my voice and start recording. And then if I either press the spacebar or click on the Voice Track button again, it will start the next track, in this case, Human. Finally, to finish my voice track, I either hit the spacebar again or click on the Voice Track button. It seems like a lot when you explain it, but if you see it in action, you'll see how simple it is. So let's show you. Okay, voice track goes in here. We start speaking, the system starts recording. You can see my voice being recorded. And when I want to start the next track, I just either click on the voice track button or press the spacebar. As you can hear, the Killers is still playing. And when I'm ready, I just simply press the stop button again. It'll ask me if I want to save the link. I can again press spacebar or click on the button. My voice link is now normalized and uploaded in high quality to the radio station. If I want to review it, click on the play button. Okay, voice track goes in here. We start speaking, the system starts recording. Okay, that's enough of that. One thing we didn't mention when we were looking earlier is when you're playing, I just either click on the and when I'm ready, you can use the right mouse button to jump around within the segue. If we're happy with this voice link, we don't need to adjust it. However, if we felt that maybe the Killers was too loud, we might adjust the envelope here. We may adjust the positioning a slight bit. And when we're ready, hit save. And those changes will be committed to the radio station. So far, everything we've looked at has been about editing or recording voice links into automated shows that will be played later. But what about if you want to actually control a live radio station? Well, for that, you need to use Playout Remote. Now, Playout Remote is an add-on for Myriad Anywhere. So not all stations will have these facilities. But if your station has opted to pay for the Playout Remote option, then you will be able to control the live on-air radio station through your web browser using the Playout Remote features. So let's take a look at how you would do that. First thing you need to do is look at the Connect to Studio option. If you drop that down, you'll see that we have either Connect to Studio One on air or Choose Location. Now, in Myriad Playout at your station, there will only be one workstation that is on air at any one time. It may well be that that's always your main studio, but if you have, say, an automation machine and a main studio, or maybe you have 2 or 3 studios, you'll have used the Myriad on-air system to tell which one is currently the broadcasting workstation. And that on-air workstation is the one that's listed here. However, if I selected Choose Locations, we'll have a list of all the workstations that have been enabled for Myriad Playout Remote within my radio station, and I can choose any one of them. In this case, I want to control the on-air machine, so I'm just going to use the drop down and connect to Studio One. Here we are. This is Myriad Anywhere Playout Remote. It looks a fair bit like the system we were just in, Myriad Anywhere RVT, but this has additional features that you didn't see in the previous window. So the first thing you'll notice is while the log looks the same, and indeed the library tab and the media wall also look the same, we've got a new tab called Favorites, and this is used for triggering favorites at the radio station end. You'll also notice that the players have increased, so instead of one player, we now have 4 players, and we can see what's currently playing, the position, the volume, and the status of the player. Finally, you'll also notice we've got a dashboard up here. Now, if you've ever run a live show on Myriad Playout, you'll be familiar with all these features. And what we're looking at here is live real-time feedback from our radio station. Let's start by taking a closer look at the dashboard. Just as in Myriad Playout, the dashboard in Myriad Anywhere Playout Remote shows you the currently playing song, along with the next 2 items to be played. You can also see a progress bar showing you how far along the song is, and also a time until the next item ends. If you're in live mode, you can also change the chain type on the currently playing item. But if you're in autofade mode, the chain type is always a green circle for automatically move on to the next item. You can also choose to dump the currently playing item by dropping down this option here and clicking on dump. When you do that, the system will automatically move on to the next item when in autofade mode. If you're in a live mode and you do the same thing, the system will dump the current item but would not carry on with the next item until you press the go button. So let's press the go button. When you press the go button, just like in Playout, the next item will start. And if I press the go button again, this item will fade out and the next items will start. So by using the dashboard, you can control your show in exactly the same way you would in the studio. You also have time remaining in the hour and whether there's an underrun or an overrun. Currently, you can see this show is underrunning by 9 seconds. If I was to add a new song, we'll see that the overrun has now gone up. Of course, in live mode, that is for me to fix. But if I switch to autofade mode, the overrun is sorted. Also notice you can go into standby mode and you can also change on-air control. Next, let's look at the media players. As you can see, Baby by Clean Bandit is currently playing in the dashboard, and you can also see it is playing in media player number 1. So let's look what happens when we press the go button. As you can see, it's moved on to Code Monkey, and Clean Bandit has been ejected from player 1 and is now playing Code Monkey in player 2. If we were in a studio, the players would look exactly the same. Let's take a closer look at what we can do with the players. We can pause or play the players just like in the studio. We can also skip along using this slider here. Notice how the dashboard is updated as well. We can even control the volume from here. When we do this, in the studio, the media players will be turning the volume up and down. That means that you can actually control the volume of the media players without having to touch your mixing desk right from within Myriad Anywhere. As you can see, we're coming to the end of this track. I'm going to just pop it into live mode. Put a stop on the end here. Just like in the studio, we have a countdown on the dashboard and corresponding countdown in the players. And at 10 seconds from the end, you get the same familiar indication that it's about to end. Now I can start the next item by pressing the Go button or pressing the Play button on the player. One final feature to tell you about on the media players in Myriad Anywhere is this button here. When you click this button, the volume control on every media player will drop to the predetermined duck level inside Myriad Playout. This provides you with a really simple way of ducking all the players if you are adding live voice via some third-party audio over IP or audio codec system. To unduck the players, simply click again. Alongside control of your dashboard and players, Anywhere Playout Remote also gives you live access to the favorites on your Playout system. Click on the Favorites tab and you can see you have your favorite sets and the favorites within each one. The favorites are shortcuts to your favorite items on the media wall, and to trigger them, you just simply click on the favorites you want to play. As you can see, it started playing in Media Player 1. You can change sets if you have multiple sets, either shared or personal. When you change to a different set, it obviously changes the favorites allocated to the favorite options 1 to 20. You can also change the number of columns and rows on your favorites, as well as the playout mode that will be used. There are 4 favorite playout modes. Start New will start a new favorite every time you click on it. So if I click on this one twice, it'll play it once in Media Player 3 and again in Media Player 4. If Restart is selected, each time you trigger the favorite, the media item will requeue and play again. Start Stop simply allows you to use the favorites to start and stop. So if I click on favorite 1, it will start playing. If I click on it again, it will stop playing. And finally, single item will only allow one favorite to play at once. So if I start with favorite 1 and then I play favorite 2, the system will fade out favorite 1 in favor of favorite 2. Remember, because favorites trigger media items, and media items can be commands, audios, lists, randoms, or rotations, you can use favorites for all sorts of things, even on remote. The final thing we need to look at in Myriad Anywhere is the settings. Click on the Anywhere icon in the top left and go to the Options. In here, you can see there are 4 different types of options. In the Segue editor, you can control options that relate to the Segue editor. The recording section allows you to set the threshold for which recording starts, and also the number of seconds you should hear prior to starting when you're doing a voice link. So you can see the default is 10 seconds, but if you only wanted to listen to 5 seconds of the song for the outgoing song when recording a voice link, change it in here. Also, you can choose whether to start recording automatically when the volume gets above a certain percentage, and you can change the percentage, or whether you only ever want to manually trigger the recording. Similarly, on playback, you can choose whether the system will automatically start playing whenever you make a segue edit, or changing it so it will only start when you tell it to. Plus, you can tell how many seconds you should hear prior to your most recent edit, and also how many seconds to display before and after the segue. Moving on to the media engine settings, we looked at this right at the beginning, how you can either have the browser automatically choose the sound device or manually choose the sound device for the different options. This one here, the audio input device, should be set to your microphone. The Segue Edit playback device should really be set to your headphones, not your speakers. And the media players should probably be to your headphones as well, but they could be normal speakers. There are a few settings about mixer controls, so whether or not we should be recording stereo, whether we should record left mono, right mono, or left and right mixed down to a mono channel. The default is stereo, and that will be the setting that most people will use. The rest of the settings really are only if you're having difficulties. You can use shorter buffers for fast display updates, but you may require a fast device to do that. Our recommendation is to use longer buffers for increased stability. We should always turn off the browser's inbuilt audio enhancement. If you turn those on, then the system will try and do automatic gain control, selecting inputs and outputs. It may also do noise cancelling and echo cancellation. Our advice is to set this to no and not allow the browser to try and enhance the audio. Help and support, the only thing in here is the export logs button. If you're having issues with Myriad Anywhere, our support team may ask you to export some logs so we can take a look and see what's going on. The media cache settings allows you to set the settings for when you download items and also managing the storage. So here, the first option here allows you to set the duration below which Myriad Anywhere will always download the entire item. So currently it's set to 60 seconds. That means if it tries to download anything in the Segue editor or for the players that is less than 60 seconds, it will download the entire file rather than just the top and tail. You can also choose whether media players should use low quality audio or high quality audio. If you've got a fast connection, then you could choose higher quality audio, so the audio quality is just better. You can also choose which items should also be downloaded in their entirety. So currently we can see that links, advert breaks, news media and voice links will all be downloaded in their entirety, whereas media items and songs will only be downloaded at the beginning and the end unless you specifically force them to download the full amount. And finally, you have the maximum disk space you want to use for your cache. So currently you can see it's set to -1, which basically means unlimited. But if you want to limit the amount of space that Myriad Anywhere can use on your system, you can put in the amount of megabytes you want to limit it to in here. Just while we're talking about the cache, there's also a clear cache button. If you click on that, everything that's been downloaded to Myriad Anywhere will be deleted and you'll have to download everything again. You should only really need to do this if your system at the far end has changed significantly or if you're having some issues or need to free up a lot of space on your system. Once you've finished with your settings, press the Save button. We've got a few more options on the options drop down as well. Full screen mode just simply hides the URL. We have an About. You can find out which version of Myriad Anywhere you are using. We have a version history option, which just tells you about updates that have been made to Myriad Anywhere recently. And change station, which allows you to choose a different station without having to quit all the way out of Myriad Anywhere. Finally, you can log out, although because it's a web browser, you don't have to log out. You can just close the window. And that's it for Myriad Anywhere. Hope you enjoy using it. If you have any issues, you can always contact support and they'll be happy to help. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you again on the next Myriad training course.